Hey guys, welcome back. iPadOS has been getting better and better year over year with each new iteration, but it's never quite become the fully fledged desktop or laptop replacement software that people have been waiting for. I personally love using my iPad Pro on a day-to-day basis when I'm out and about, as I can accomplish almost any task that I could accomplish on my MacBook Pro. It's a lot more easy to take around with me, and it's got features that my MacBook Pro just can't quite compete with. With yesterday's release of iPadOS 15, Apple brought some features over from iOS, such as App Library and Widgets. They've refined things like multitasking to make them easier to use, and they've added new features like quick notes that we didn't even know we needed. So how good is this year's version of iPadOS? Here are my top 10 features that you'll want to use. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, we talk about all things tech, particularly those smaller tech items to increase your productivity, streamline your workflow, and make your life easier. So the first feature we're going to talk about is multitasking. Now, iPads have had multitasking for the last few years, but it's always been a little bit unclear as to how exactly to get the best use out of multitasking. Apple wasn't super clear about it, and in order to do it, you sort of had to contort your fingers into a weird way and swipe apps up from the dock, and then you slid over a window and to the right, and sometimes you couldn't find it. So with iPadOS 15, anytime you open up an app, you're going to have these three dots up at the top of the screen. Once you press on that, it'll give you some options. So you can see that these three icons came up, and you also have this thing called the shelf on the bottom, but we'll go over that in a minute. So with the three icons at the top, the one on the left basically is the full screen app that you're currently using. If you press the one in the center, it's going to slide that app all the way over to the left until where it's almost not visible, and it's going to tell you choose another app to open. So we're going to open up Spark, and then you'll have your apps side by side like normal. You can resize them if you want, so you can make one bigger than the other. Now, you'll notice each of these apps has its own set of three dots. So if we press those three dots again, we get the same options. But what if we want to make one of these apps into a slide over app? So we put it on top of the app, and then we want to open another app in addition to those. So we're going to hit the slide over button, and you can see Spark has now become a slide over app on top of Safari. We can move that over to the right, and Apple tells us that there is an arrow right there if we need to pull it back over. And then if we want to, we hit the three dots here, and we can add another app like Gmail, and then we can bring our slide over Spark back. So very intuitive. It's a lot easier to understand. I think it's going to be a lot easier for most people to use, whereas before maybe it wasn't very clear. I personally knew people who had iPads who had no idea how to use multitasking. Now, the other thing we mentioned just a little while ago is when you press these three dots, you'll notice that these screens come up on the bottom. This is called the shelf, and what the shelf is every instance of that particular app that you have open currently. So this is actually really cool if you need to like quickly switch between different, maybe you have different documents open or different Safari windows, and maybe you have a desktop set up in each window. You can add another instance if you want. And so this is just a really cool addition because you get this in most apps, not every app right now, but the shelf does appear in most apps. So it's a really cool feature that Apple has added, and I think it just kind of enhances multitasking. One more really cool thing that Apple has added to multitasking this year is you can now save spaces. And what I mean by that is, so for example, we've got Safari and we've got Spark open side by side here. If we swipe all the way up, you can see now it actually saves that space. So if I go into Gmail and then I go back to my two apps that were open, it actually saves that as sort of like a desktop. So you can actually have multiple instances of multitasking going, and you can go in between them to, use whatever you want. So this is another really cool feature of multitasking. It's kind of like the icing on the cake, and if you're going to be doing different things at one time, but you don't necessarily want to close those apps, but you do want to have different instances of multitasking open, this is a great feature to use. Before we leave multitasking, one other really cool thing that Apple sort of glossed over during their whole presentation on multitasking was the ability with certain apps to press and hold and then bring them to the center. So it looks like, for right now anyway, this only works in the Notes app, the Messages app, and Apple's own email app. And basically what you do is you pick a note and you hard press on it, and then you'll see this thing over here that says open a new window. It'll actually bring this note in between your two multitasking panes so you can see it full screen. So this is a really cool feature. I don't know if this is only going to work with native Apple apps or if they're going to open this to third-party developers. I've tried it with a few other apps like Spark. It doesn't seem to work, and I couldn't even really get it to work with the Messages app. So I don't know if this is something that they're still kind of developing, or if this is basically how it's going to work and maybe they're just going to kind of see if people will use it or not. But it is cool to have nonetheless. The thing is, it's a little bit buried, so I don't know if that many people are even going to know it exists. So another cool thing for you to check out when you get the chance. So the next feature we're going to talk about is widgets. And Apple introduced widgets to iOS on the iPhone last year. On iPad, we got sort of a muted version of widgets that you could kind of have by swiping to the side of the screen, but we didn't get to use them on our full screens for some reason. Apple has now added that feature, and it's really cool, but also kind of frustrating at the same time. So you'll see on my iPad, I've got a bunch of different widgets set up that are different sizes. We've got this really large one here, we've got this sort of medium-sized one, and this longer one. I don't really have any of the smaller ones set up right now. And right now I've got 2 pages of widgets set up. And as with, you know, the apps and widgets on the iPhone, you can only move these to certain positions as they will only snap to the grid on the iPad screen. You can't place them wherever you want. It makes it really annoying, especially when you're trying to rearrange them and they're going all over the place. So, you know, you have to kind of take these widgets with a grain of salt. The other thing that I'm not too happy about is that Apple replaced the Today view. And the Today view was something on last versions of iPadOS where you could have a few widgets listed on the side of your screen along with the time and the date. And it was kind of nice. I thought it was really cool. I actually had my iPad set up where I had it on the left side and then I didn't have any apps on the main screen. And I thought it was a really clean look. I have figured out a way to get around that this year by using the Riedel Calendar app widget, which gives you a nice big overview of your schedule for the day as well as a calendar, and it does give you the date and the clock. So I like using that, and I have it right on top of my weather so I can kind of see everything at a glance. So at release, Apple has redesigned some of the widgets to take advantage of the extra screen real estate, but more and more companies are going to be coming out with their own versions of different size widgets for the iPad in the coming months, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. One of the cool widgets that Apple has updated is the Files app widget, so you can have an overview of the files you have in that app. And you can actually choose which folder you want to use. You can go recents, you can go downloads, so that's really nice. And then if you click into that file, it goes right to it. So if you're looking for a particular file, maybe you've used something recently, it's a very easy way to get to that particular file. Another cool widget update that Apple has released is a contacts widget, and it comes in different sizes. So if we go over to add widgets here, you can see with the people widgets, you've got the single person, you've got the one that I've got, which has 4 people. You can have up to 6 people, and then on another one you can have up to 10 people. So if there's contacts that you are in touch with every single day or frequently, this is kind of a cool feature to have. So the really cool thing is when you press into the people in your widgets, because it's going to show you a bunch of different information that you've shared with this particular person. So if I press into my daughter's contact information, it shows me, you know, I can message, I can call her, FaceTime, or mail her. It shows me photos that she's sent to me, links that she's shared. So here she's shared a video with me. I've seen in other contacts where it has their social media information. So If they have a Facebook or an Instagram link, it'll show up. If you've shared any emails or different information. So this is a really cool widget that Apple has come out with, and I'm gonna fool around with it and see which configuration works best for me. But right now I kind of like the 4-person configuration. Feature number 3 is the app library. And if you remember with iOS 14, we got the app library on our phones. For some reason, Apple decided not to include it in iPadOS last year, but we get it this year. Really cool feature. It basically stays in your dock on the bottom, and you just hit that button and you've got your app library. Works the same as it does on the iPhone. I personally like having the app library instead of having a bunch of apps cluttering my screen. So you can see basically I just have widgets right now, and then if you go to that third screen, the app library comes up. You can choose whether you want badges to show up in the app library. The other cool thing along with the app library is Apple has added the ability to hide certain home screens if you maybe don't want to use them at the moment. So if you hard press on your screen and then you get the dots at the bottom, you'll see I have 3 screens set up right now. I've got 2 pages of widgets, and then I've got a page of apps. Now, I don't really want to see those apps because I've got my app library, so I'm going to uncheck them. Hit done, and then hit done again, and then you can see we no longer have that page of apps. So really cool feature, probably something that people won't use a whole lot because it's one of those things that Apple sort of keeps hidden, but it's going to come up again in one of the next features that we'll discuss in a minute. So the next feature we're going to talk about is something that's really cool that I don't think anybody saw coming this year, and it's called Quick Notes. And what Quick Notes does is it allows you to swipe up from the bottom corner of the screen to bring up a Quick Note. It's a little bit hard. I've had to kind of fool around to get the right actual, it's a little bit hard sometimes to bring up the Quick Notes, I've noticed. I don't know if it would work better with the Apple Pencil, but as you can see on my screen now, I've got this note that I can actually move around pretty much wherever I want. Of course, with Apple, they only let you put it in the corners. You can't put it like in the middle of the screen. So from here, I can basically type into the note, I can take my pencil and I can write on the note, and as with any other kind of note, I can change the color, I can erase things, I can use the highlighter, and then you'll see that there's a few different options here. So this is the gallery button. If I press this, it's going to go into the gallery of all my Quick Notes, and I've only got one right here, but if I had others, they would show up. So that's really cool, and if I go back into my Quick Note, it's just like a full-size note. And then we've also got the ability to share it. We can delete it, and then if we press this, we have another Quick Note again. And the cool thing is, whenever you're making a Quick Note, it always appears on top of whatever app you're using. So you could even multitask, so you could have like 2 instances of apps open at the same time. You can bring your Quick Note back, and you can basically, like, say you're doing research on something, you can have this note open. You could actually do this before, but I think this is actually a better implementation of notes because it allows you to just kind of have this floating window open versus something that's always on the side of your screen that might be getting in the way. The other cool thing that you'll notice here is whenever you're working on a Quick Note and you've got a browser open, you're going to see this button that says Add Link. And what this allows you to do is quickly add the link to your note for the website that you're on. So if you want to refer back to that site later, maybe you were doing some research and you're trying to look up something, or maybe you want to collaborate on this note with someone and you want them to have this link to look at later, it'll add that automatically to the note, no dragging or dropping. And just another really cool feature. I think people are going to use these Quick Notes a lot once they get used to them. And finally, with Notes across all devices, Apple has added the ability to use hashtags. So you can actually set a hashtag for a note, and we'll call this, let's say, Apple. And once you go into your Notes app, now you see you actually can search by tags. So you can have all tags. You can have ones that go just for Apple. So this is a really cool way. As I know, I have a lot of notes on my particular device, and sometimes I'm having trouble finding things. So the ability to set hashtags for notes to make them easier to find is a great addition this year. Feature number 5 is called focus modes, and what focus modes do is they essentially replace the do not disturb function that has been present on iOS for a number of years. So the way you get to focus modes is you swipe down into Control Center, and you'll see right here there's a thing that I actually have turned on called recording video. Now, what focus modes do is they enable you to have preset conditions to set your iOS devices to if you do not want to be disturbed. So let's say you're doing work, you're recording a video, you're trying to sleep, you can actually set preferences within each of these focus modes so you can have certain apps that won't give you notifications. So the way you set up focus modes is by going in your settings app, and there's now a new focus menu under settings, and you can see that Apple already has some preset ones like sleep, work, and personal, but you can actually make a custom one if you want as well. So for example, in the work one, you can see that allowed notifications, I have some people that I've allowed to notify me even if I do have my work focus mode on, and there are certain apps I can get notifications from, but other apps will not give me notifications. This is really cool because if, say, you're doing different tasks during the day, and maybe during some tasks you want to be notified by people or apps, other tasks you don't want to be notified at all, this gives you the ability to set those focus modes. You can even have it set to where it notifies people if they're trying to message you that you have focus mode on and that you'll get back to them at some other point. So that way, if someone is really trying to get a hold of you and you're just not answering them, they'll see that you have this focus mode on, so they know you're just not totally ignoring you. Feature number 6 is the updated Safari. So last year, Apple updated Safari by giving it a desktop browsing experience. So definitely made it easier to use some apps like Google Drive and OneDrive, things like that, but it still wasn't quite as good as the experience you got when using a Mac. Now, Apple has updated Safari on the iPad to get a very similar experience to what you would get on your Mac. So when you open it, first thing you'll notice is this beautiful full screen view that you now have, and you can actually customize it by going down and hitting the edit button, and this will allow you to basically add whatever options you would like, such as favorites, shared with you, privacy report. You can select a background image. I've actually picked one that I got when I was at Yellowstone, and so this makes a much more desktop-like browsing experience. The next thing they did is they added extensions. So while there aren't a ton of extensions available yet, you do have the option of adding those in. You hit this manage extensions from this sort of puzzle looking piece up here. You can see right now I've got a couple of extensions. I've got card pointers and I've got Grammarly for Safari, which is really cool. To get more extensions, you simply go into your settings app, pick Safari, pick extensions, and then it'll tell you the ones that you have installed as well as ones that you don't have turned on. And then you can actually go to the App Store and get more extensions, and it will show you all the ones that they have available right now. Hopefully they're going to be adding more of these in the near future, so you have more options to choose from. But really cool experience when using Safari. Feature 7 is something that Apple calls live text. Now, live text is something that's been available on Pixel phones for a while, but we've never really had anything like it on iOS or iPadOS. With live text, Apple is enabling you to use your camera to take photos of certain items containing text. So let's say it's a sign with a phone number, or maybe it's a label of the back of a box of cereal, something like that. You can take a photo of that text and then instantly copy it into whatever document you would like. Let's say you need to put it into a note. One thing that I did was, my kids are going on a camping trip soon. Their school sent home a list of things that they needed to take with them. I simply used live text to copy that list into a note, and then I easily had it on my phone so I could make it into a checklist to check off things that they would need to take with them. The other really cool thing you can do with live text is you can identify certain pictures of things. So you could take pictures of animals, plants, different items, and Apple will use machine learning to do its best to identify what those things are. I haven't used it a ton, but I did use it with my dog, and it was somewhat able to identify what kind of dog he was, and it'll give you more information, bring up results on the web. So this is a screenshot I took from a magazine, and what we can do is basically press on the text, scroll down, and your context menu comes up, you hit copy, and then we can now copy this text into a new note. So the other cool thing with live text that you can do is you can actually translate it on your device. So if you press on it, hit translate, and it's now going to translate all this stuff into Spanish. So this is really cool, especially if you're going to be traveling and maybe there's a sign that you're trying to read that you can't quite figure out, or maybe there's a phone number that you need to call and you don't have a way to kind of get it down quickly on your device. You can take a picture of it, refer back to it later, and you're able to call that phone number right from your device by just clicking on it. And you can do the same with addresses just by taking a picture of the address, clicking on the address, and Maps will automatically get you directions to that address. So this is an incredibly useful feature. I think this is going to be used a ton by people. I know I'm going to use it, and I can't wait to get out in the wild and really see how it works. The next feature we're going to talk about is the upgrades to FaceTime, and in particular, the one that I'm most excited about are FaceTime Links. So previously with FaceTime, the only thing you could really do is FaceTime with other people who had Apple devices. You couldn't schedule a call like you could with Google Meet or Zoom. You couldn't set a particular day like a recurring appointment. The next feature we're going to talk about is the upgrades to FaceTime, and in particular, the one that I'm most excited about are FaceTime Links. So previously with FaceTime, the only thing you could really do is FaceTime with other people who had Apple devices. You couldn't schedule a call like you could with Google Meet or Zoom. You couldn't set a particular day like a recurring appointment, and you definitely couldn't FaceTime with people who didn't own non-Apple devices. Well, Apple has done away with all that, and you can now set a FaceTime link. So you would basically send this link to somebody, and whether or not they're on an Apple device or not, they can use this FaceTime link to connect with you. And they could be on a Windows computer, they can be on an Android phone. You can actually set a recurring appointment with the FaceTime link. I will probably be using FaceTime a lot more than some other things such as Zoom or Google Meet, because it's automatically there. It requires no effort. It's something that's already built into your device. The last two features, unfortunately, I can't show you on my own device right now because they haven't been released. They were supposed to be released when iPadOS was released yesterday, but due to some problems that they had during the beta release, it looks like they're going to be pushed out in a software update probably later this fall, either in iPadOS 15.1 or 15.2. The first one is called Universal Control. When Apple debuted this during WWDC, people let out a gasp because this was something that people have been looking for forever. Basically, with Universal Control, what this enables you to do is extend your Mac screen so you could be using a mouse on your Mac and then have that mouse go over to your iPad, and you can suddenly use that same mouse with your iPad and back and forth. So the implications with this are amazing because you could now extend your Mac screen without the use of an external monitor. So say you needed to move some documents around and you didn't have enough screen real estate on your Mac to do that, you can now extend it over to your iPad screen, or vice versa. And the last feature that we're going to talk about, which again was not included in this version of iPadOS, was Shareplay. And with Shareplay, what this enables you to do is to use FaceTime to watch movies, TV shows, listen to music, and share your screen with other people on FaceTime. Now, this was included on a few of the early versions of the beta that came out earlier this year, but Apple removed it because they said it wasn't performing well enough. I know that the beta testers reported that there were lots of bugs with it, but it's another one of those things like Universal Control that looks really cool in practice. Essentially, you could say start a show on Netflix with 3 of your friends. You're all watching at the same time. You can control the volume. You can control whether it starts and stops. You can fast forward, rewind. So it's essentially like watching a movie, but you're all in different locations. And I think this is going to be really popular with kids because I know, especially with my kids, they often want to watch shows with their friends, but maybe their friend is sick or they just can't come over that day. This will allow them to use their phones or their iPads. So I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on iPadOS 15. Have you updated? Are you kind of holding off Are you using some of the features? Do you absolutely hate the features that they updated? Do you think that there are features that they should have included? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to getting my iPad mini 6 this week and seeing how iPadOS works on that, because it works great on my iPad Pro, which has a very big screen to take advantage of those, especially those larger widget sizes. But I'm curious to see how this is going to work on the iPad mini with its smaller screen to see if I still get the same experience. As always, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate all the new subscribers who have joined since my last video. If you like this content, please remember to drop a like and subscribe, as it helps me to grow the channel. If you'd like to see more content like this, or if you have an idea for a future video, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. Stay tuned for my iPad mini unboxing coming in the next few days, as well as an iPhone 13 Pro Max unboxing and setup. And again, would love to hear from you. Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.